No worries.
Well, I'm the artist taxi driver back here with Natalie Bennett. Natalie, we've got, she's the leader of the Green Party, the leader. Okay, we've got energy companies putting a gun to the head of mums and dads across the country saying either feed your key meter or feed your kids.
Yeah. No, I mean, we have a huge problem with the big six energy companies who, their profits just keep rising. That's very clear. And, what happens is the gas price goes up and they say, oh, we've got to increase prices. The gas price goes down. Oddly enough, we don't see the prices going down. And, we have an energy system that's clearly not working. But the other thing that we also very much need to focus on is we also have some of the leakiest homes in Europe, the worst insulated, and £1 in 4 that we spend on gas heating either goes straight up through an uninsulated roof or out through, a leaky window or wall or whatever. And so, there's so much we need to do to tackle the big energy companies, but also to put large amounts of government money into insulating homes.
I see Caroline Lucas talking about that the other day on the television, but they, it's never mentioned. That's what they go on about green and about how bad. But they don't mention that in 2012, last year, they paid £7 billion, £7 billion in dividends.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what we were talking before about privatisation, and it's simply putting, often when it's public services, you're putting public money into private pockets. Here we're putting taking money from the pockets of the poor, by and large, or all of us, and putting it into those private profits again.
I mean, it's never mentioned. I mean, they don't say that. That should be the headline banner.
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, sadly, it's so often, I get pretty angry and pretty frustrated when I read, things like the Mail and the Telegraph, and they say, oh, it's these terrible green levies that have raised your prices. And then you actually get down to the detail, and I quite like the fact that, just one small figure, onshore wind is costing you at the moment the princely sum of 14p a day if you have an average energy bill. Cleaning up old nuclear is costing you 48p a day.
Well, Paul Flynn, he's something, a Welsh nuclear plant is going to be like ready for decontamination decommissioning in 90 years time. Okay, so we got fossil fuels, bad, right? Imagine instead of £52 billion on HS2, we put a solar panel on every single house in the country.
You only want the ones that face south, probably, but yes, as a general principle, I'd agree with you. I mean,
can you imagine solar panels everywhere? Everyone should have one on top of your car, on top of your house.
And one of the things you might want to ask is, why are we not doing every new build house? Should surely have, solar, ground source heat pumps where it's appropriate, all those kind of technologies. And what we also need to do is be building those new houses to the highest possible standard. Because ultimately, I mean, people often challenge me when I'm promoting onshore and offshore wind and even solar, because there's still a cost, there's still an environmental cost to all of those things, which is true. So what we have to do first of all is say we have to use the minimum amount of energy that we need. And if you look around, it's vastly wasted often at the moment.
I think they've got the technology. I think they can do it, because what happens when you put a solar panel, if you put solar panels on, it's free energy. It's gone. It's over.
Well, that's one of the things, George Osborne's dash for gas, he's so very keen on. But the fact is that, gas is the high cost. The International Energy Agency predicts that gas prices globally will rise by 40% by 2020. And, it's always going to be volatile. You're never going to know what the price is going to be in the future. Whereas wind, solar, tidal, and eventually in the future, all of those things, the fuel will always cost nothing.
But that's why they want to invest in fracking, because George Osborne, his father-in-law, Lord Brown, and all these other lords, they want fracking because they control the means of production. And if it costs them money to take it out and sell it to you, they've got control.
And that's why one of the things we're very keen on encouraging, and it is growing, is community-owned energy. So not just, a solar panel on the roof of your house, but I've been down to Lewis in Sussex, where they've got the local brewery has a big array of panels over the top, and that's community-owned. And that's money coming in from the community, and money goes back to the community. So then, and that's...
Is that with solar panels?
So it's solar panels, yeah.
Every house should have a solar panel. Do you know, last night, right, I got this project, and partly what I'm interviewing about is the war machine, which is basically banks, oil and arms. Without widespread debt, destruction and death, the global economy would collapse. And last night I interviewed two people. One of them was this incredible Colombian lady, Yasmin, who'd come all the way from the barricades where they're trying to stop this company, which is an Australian, Anglo-Australian, BHP Billiton, the largest miners in the world. diverting a river, polluting the waters, and she came to the AGM. And another guy, he was, I interviewed an Indonesian, Heinrich, and he's from Borneo, and you know that, you're Australian, from down that way, right? The BHP Billiton have got 7 coal concessions. They want to go to the Kalimantan, which is the lungs of Southeast Asia, city of London, the city of corruption.
Yep.
To go there to mine coal. And
that's, you know, beautiful untouched rainforest, or, you know, increasingly it's not, but that's certainly what it was a few years ago, and, you know, huge potential. And I think, you know, that as you rightly identify, I mean, we've tended to say in Britain that, you know, we need to build our future on banking, on the arms industry, and on pharmaceuticals, and, you know, none of those are industries that are in our long-term interest.
But I mean, mining coal in Borneo, I mean, they're seriously nuts.
Yeah, well, you know, exactly.
Do you know David Cameron and this government are backing BHP Billiton, along with HSBC, Barclays, and do you know they're giving government aid to build a railway to take the coal?
But it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, but well, I mean, the thing is, one of the things about fracking and about things like that is that, you know, the Carbon Tracker organisation worked out that of our known fossil fuel reserves, to keep within, you know, avoiding catastrophic climate change, we need to leave at least half of our known fossil fuel reserves in the ground. Now, what we have to look at, there's a big financial issue there, because, you know, the prices on the stock market, lots of those prices for all those mining companies, those finance companies you're talking about, all of that, are underpinned by the value of the reserves they have control over of fossil fuel. But if we've got to leave 50% of that, more than 50% of that fossil fuel in the ground, then we've got huge financial implications. Well, and so what we should be doing is working out how do we manage our way through that process of leaving it in the ground, not digging it up.
Well, they should smash the mining companies to bits. I mean, what they do around the world. Do you know? We're still an imperialist country. We send our miners to Nigeria, to Iraq. We don't care where we go. We destroy places. The city of London, the city of corruption. That's our gift to the world. That's what I said to the people last night.
Yeah, well, and also you mentioned the arms industry. I mean, one of my things that I get particularly exercised about is Saudi Arabia, which is, of course, you know, one of the worst human rights abusing countries in the world. We've just seen this week, you know, the women out there bravely protesting to get the amazing human right of being allowed to drive. Now, you know, Saudi Arabia, we've sold or we've given export contracts for £4 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia in the past.
Selling arms to everyone. David Cameron, he went to Egypt as soon as there was a thing. He was running out to Egypt. He goes to Indonesia, Sri Lanka. Astonishingly, Tony Abbott won the Australian election, and he won it on carbon tax. He said, "I'm going to cut all. We're not going to be paying any of that carbon tax."
Well, I think that was partly true. Although it was also the Labor Party hadn't been able to decide which person they wanted as leader, and that didn't help them in that election result.
But there was also but there's also that thing about green is bad. And I've got a question here for you. How can you get working class people to support your party, your policies, your vision when they're fed those messages that green is bad?
Well, I think people are increasingly realising the messages they're being fed by, you know, newspapers like The Sun and The Mail, by some, you know, Sky TV, by all of those kind of media sources. People are increasingly distrusting those media sources. And things like, you know, when I say, you know, one of the top things I always say in terms of Green Party policies is we want to make the minimum wage a living wage. If you work full-time, you should earn enough money to live on. And that's something that I find, you know, people very much sympathise with, plus things like renationalising the railways, publicly owned and publicly run NHS, zero tuition fees at university, and the restoration of something like an EMA for students of 16 and 17. You know, listening to all those policies, people go, well, yeah, we agree with all of that.
Yeah, but they don't, because that's too much for them. What you just said is too much. They need a simple thing. They need something like don't trust an hippie. They need the opposite of that.
Okay, well, you know...
Don't trust a Tory. Don't trust them.
well, I'd rather go for the positive, which is, you know, something like let's work for the common good.
Yeah.
So instead of private profit, we're working for common good.
Well, the Tories, they're despicable. Tony Abbott, and the rise of conservatism in the world, because Tony Abbott also won on immigration, didn't he? Now, we're living in a moment in history where it's okay in this country to have racist vans on the streets, text messages being sent to people, and doctors asking for people for their papers.
Yeah, I mean, that doctors asking for their papers is in the immigration bill that's now before Parliament. And I mean, that is hugely disturbing. Doctors asking people for their papers, and also landlords are being expected to check the immigration status of people. And I was actually spoke at the launch of an excellent new movement, the movement against xenophobia, MAX for short. And we were talking there about the impossibility of what's your local NHS surgery going to do? Are they going to ask every single patient to prove their residency status, or are they going to look at someone and decide whether they look like they're an immigrant or not and ask them to prove it? And what's going to happen in terms of people needing homes? Lots of landlords may well say, and you can even understand them say, oh, we don't want the hassle, tell their agent we don't want anyone who looks like they might be a migrant or sounds like they might be a migrant.
It's
and
awful.
That's
just despicable. I'm the Irish taxi driver. This is Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party. We're going to be back in a minute.